Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Casual to Competitive, where what we do is we take decks that are sometimes not good, sometimes okay, sometimes not played, and we try to play them, make them better, and learn more about ourselves along the way. So this week we have Jund. So if you don't know what Jund is basically a color combination of green, red, and black. It's a very popular and very expensive deck in Modern. We're playing Standard today, so we're playing Standard Jund. Now this deck I've kind of modeled after the Modern Jund somewhat. So basically we don't have the great tools that Modern Jund has. You know, we don't have Liliana the Veil, we don't have, you know, Abrupt Decays or Terminates or that kind of stuff, but we do have some somewhat equivalents in Standard. So we'll start off. We have 22 lands, we have 4 Aether Hubs and 4 Evolving Wilds to help us get our colors that we need, because we are running a 3-color deck. 3-color mana bases are not that good in current Standard, so we have to try and make do with what we have. And we don't have fetches, but you know, what can you do? This deck is packed full of removal, because there's a lot of creature decks going around. There's black-green aggro decks, there's, you know, the vehicle decks, there's the Saheeli decks that, you know, generate energy, and then there's the energy decks, you know, I can't remember that card is. You pay 6 energy and you get to look at 6 cards and put one of them in play. Anyways, there's a lot of removal. So we have, you know, we don't have Lightning Bolt, we have Shock. So we have 4 Shocks. You know, we don't have Abrupt Decay, we have Fatal Push. So we have 3 Fatal Pushes and 1 in the sideboard. We don't have Thoughtseize or Inquisition of Kozilek. We do have Transgress the Mind. So this card isn't very powerful in Standard. We have 2 in the main board, 2 in the sideboard. So it's basically to get a gauge of what our opponent's doing and try and pick something off from their hand. There's the Saheeli kind of combo decks, but outside of that, most of the decks are kind of pretty low to the ground. You know, 2 mana, 3 mana creatures. You know, aside from, you know, the Gear Hulks and whatever, but they can be useful. So we have 2 in the main board, 2 in the sideboard. We have 3 Grasps of Darkness in the main board. We have 4 Harnessed Lightnings. So we don't really have an energy sub-theme in this deck. There's no energy payoff card like there would be like a Dynavolt Tower or something like that. So we're just using them as straight up removal. We don't have Tarmogoyfs, but we do have Sylvan Advocates. So Sylvan Advocate is a great creature. No one really plays it anymore, which I kind of find surprising. I guess maybe because there's just more synergies out there with the green decks being token generators, or 1/1 counter generators and whatnot. But if you don't know what Sylvan Advocate is, it's a 2 mana 2/3 with Vigilance, already undercosted, and if you have 6 or more lands, it gets +2/+2, as well as land creatures. We don't have any land creatures because I just don't think we can afford to run them. I mean, maybe we could, but we're running it as is. We don't have Terminate or Dreadbore or anything like that, but we do have Unlicensed Disintegration, 3 mana instant, 1 black, 1 red, 1 colorless. It destroys target creature, and if you control an artifact, you deal 3 damage to that creature's controller. We don't have Dark Confidant, but we do have Sin Prodder. So Sin Prodder is something that a lot of people expected to be really good. It hasn't shown up at all. And it's basically a 3 mana devil creature, red, 1 red, 2 colorless. It has Menace, it's a 3/2. And basically at the beginning of your upkeep, you reveal the top card of your library, and an opponent can have you put that into your graveyard. And if they do, Sin Prodder deals damage equal to the card's converted mana cost. Otherwise, you put it in your hand. So basically, they take damage or you get a card and on your upkeep. So it's basically kind of like an extra draw. For card draw in this deck, because it is a bit of a slow deck, you know, we got to slog through a bit of the early game to get to what we want to do. We have Live Fast. So there's 4 of them in the deck. It's a black sorcery, 1 black, 2 colorless. You draw 2 cards, lose 2 life, and get 2 energy. Pretty straightforward. We have Arlinn Kord. Once again, another really kind of not played planeswalker, but she's pretty powerful in the right situations. So she's 4 mana, 1 green, 1 red, 2 colorless. So it's a flip walker. The face up, or the first face, I guess, because there's 2 faces, would be +1 until the end of turn. A target creature gains +2/+2 and gains vigilance and haste, which can be put a lot of pressure on. So you drop this when you have like a Dark Dwellers on the board, or a Gear Hulk, or even a Sylvan Advocate that, you know, ends up being a 6/7 if you have 6 lands with vigilance, or it already has vigilance, but haste, it can be really powerful. 0, so no minus, no plus, you create a 2/2 green wolf creature token and you transform it, and it starts with 3 loyalty. So after you transform it, then you have +1 creatures you control gain +1/+1 and gain trample until the end of turn. Also can be pretty powerful in our deck. You know, a 7/7 first strike with trample, pretty tough. A 5/5 menace with trample, pretty tough. A -1, it deals 3 damage to target creature or player, basically lightning bolt. Also pretty good early game removal. And then -6, you get an emblem with creatures you control have haste, and tap this and creature deals damage equal to its power to target creature or player. Also a very powerful effect. Probably not going to be getting up to 6. We're going to be mainly using the +1 on the first side and the -1 on the other side. And then we have 4 Goblin Dark Dwellers. So this is kind of like the mid to late game plan. So it's a 5 mana, 4/4 with Menace, 2 red, 3 colorless. And when it enters the battlefield, you can cast an instant or sorcery card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. If that card would be put in your graveyard, exile it. So basically you get to cast a 3 mana instant or sorcery for free and then exile it afterward, which we have a ton of. We have, you know, Unlicensed Disintegration, we have Live Fast, we have Transgress the Minds, we have tons of other removal, Grasp, Shock, Fatal Push, etc. So it's a pretty powerful effect in this deck, and it gives us a lot of utility. You can 2-for-1 them, get a big body on the board, you kill one of their creatures, and it has Menace as well, so it can be a tough creature to block. And then we have 2 Combustible Gearhulks. I've gone back and forth on the Gearhulks. I had the Verdurous Gearhulks in here before, I had the Combustibles now, I've tried with the Noxious mainboard. I like the Combustible Gearhulks. They may not be the best, but I think they're good, and they have a very powerful effect, and they're just a tough creature, right? So it's a 6 mana, 6/6 first striker, 2 red, 4 colorless, and when it enters the battlefield, the target opponent may have you draw 3 cards. If they don't want to do that, then you put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard, and then Gearhulk deals damage equal to the total converted mana cost of these cards. So I've liked this card for a while. I've never really had a place to put it, so we're going to try it out in here and see how it goes. Okay. Now for the sideboard, there's some basic, you know, black removal sideboard, as I like to call it. That's pretty standard. We have 2 Ruinous Paths to deal with Planeswalkers. We have another Grasp of Darkness. We have our 4th Fatal Push, and then we have 2 Noxious Gearhulks. So once again, very powerful effect on creature. 6 mana, 5/4 with Menace. When it enters the battlefield, you destroy a target creature, and you gain life equal to its toughness. And then we have some more removal. We have Galvanic Bombardment, excuse me. It's basically a 1 mana, 1 red mana instant, and it deals X damage to target creature, where X is 2 plus the number of cards named Galvanic Bombardment in your graveyard. So it starts off as a shock that can't hit players, obviously, but a shock, then turns into a lightning bolt, and then it's 4 damage, and then eventually 5 damage if you have all 4 in your graveyard. So it can be a very powerful effect later in the game. We have 2 more Transgress the Minds as our hand disruption. Accidentally got rid of 1. And then we have 3 natural obsolescence. So I was trying to run Natural State, which is a 1 mana green instant that destroys target artifact or enchantment with 3 mana count that costs 3 mana or less. It just wasn't very good. Like, I think Dynavolt Tower is 3 mana, which is a good target for it. There's some vehicles that are good targets. You know, there's no more Smuggler's Copter, which was the main focus of that target before. But this is also pretty powerful. It puts a target artifact on the bottom of its owner's library. So the reason why I've included this instead of Natural State is that A, it can disrupt Scrap Heat Scroungers because they can go to the graveyard and just come back at will. This throws them in the bottom of the library. Pretty powerful. It's cheap effect. 2 mana. Also, it affects, you know, things like, you know, the Dynavolt Towers, big vehicles. There's the Aether Sphere Harvester, I think it is. That is it 3 mana? I can't remember off the top of my head, but, you know, it sets them back a lot. You know, not only does it obviously doesn't kill it, but it gets rid of it, puts it at the bottom of the library, and sets them back a little bit. So it's a pretty powerful effect. Okay, so that's the deck. Stick around, and we'll get into some games.